Hello again, everyone. Today we're looking at the scoot. Here's what it looks like. Alright, so again in slow motion, I start with a wind up, step back into a relatively deep lunge, put my hand down, jump, and swing. Alright, so let's go over how that's done. The scoot is a relatively simple trick. It's not too complex, but it does take a little bit of practice to generate power out of it. I start by winding up, stepping back into a lunge, and if you notice I'm slightly off balance when I do that. I use that to my advantage, so when I do reach, I get the majority of my body weight over my hand, and it makes the scoot a whole lot easier. Push off of the ground with my round leg. I want to create an arc shape with my hips. I want to make a nice big shape so that when I land, it's easy for me to swing. All right, so here's what it looks like. All right, so for this progression, it's a little bit easier to start on the knees, and as you practice, you can slowly work off of the knee. If you notice, I'm on a relatively straight line. The foot I take off on, my hand, and the foot I land on are all relatively close to the white line. Alright, so you can practice by starting what I'm doing here, like a low-angled, off-axis scoot. But again, it's a relatively simple movement, but it does take practice to learn how to generate power. So it's something you need to work with, learning how to block and using it for bigger tricks. All right, so once you get comfortable with that, you can get really low, almost to where your knees barely touching on the scoot. And eventually you'll be able to just stand up and scoot right out of that. Alright, so the number one problem I see with scoots is the chest stays facing the ground. And what happens when you do that is it creates a low and off-axis scoot, which translates to your swing, making it difficult to swing out of. All right, so the way to fix this is you want your chest to be facing towards your target or towards the ceiling. You want your chest to be facing upwards. You don't want it to be facing the ground until you're on the downswing. It helps me to think about moving my hips in a big arc shape, but just remembering to open your chest and keeping your torso facing either towards your target or towards the ceiling on the upswing of the trick is going to help. All right, so the next problem I see is having a small scoot. Having a small scoot is okay when you first start out because they're easier. So if you're just learning the trick, it's not too big of a deal, but work on stretching your scoot out. The longer your scoot is, the more power you're going to be able to generate out of it. And again, this does take time. It does take practice to learn how to do that. But by having a small scoot, you're not going to be able to block your momentum. The next problem I see is doing a scoot not in a straight line. Now, this doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to be exactly on a line when you do a scoot, but generally speaking, you want to be roughly on a straight line. If your scoot is too off to the side like that, your momentum's going to go in that direction. If it's too off to the side in the other direction, it's just not going to work. So play around with the angles, and it takes a little bit of practice, but you generally want to be in a straight line. All right, so next we're going to be talking about some cheat codes to make your scoot powerful. Big arc shape is very important. If you have a nice big arc shape, it's going to make the swing a whole lot easier. Next cheat code would be to flex your your takeoff leg and keep it flexed throughout the scoot. What this does is when you land your scoot and then you release that flex muscle, it's gonna send your swing through the roof. So that's something that really helps me in my scoots in particular. And let's see what else. Yes, blocking. This goes back to the distance thing I was saying earlier. If you see, pause the video here. My foot's at an angle, a relatively sharp angle, and what this allows me to do is block my momentum and direct it upwards, so it makes my swing more powerful. Like so. Wonderful. And I also like doing hook kicks to scoots, E-kicks to scoots. You can do back sweeps, mei-luas, and things like that, but it makes the scoot a whole lot easier. But that's pretty much my tutorial, guys. Here's some angles for you to help you out, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.